John Anthony Walker wasn't a defector. He didn't flee to the Soviet Union. He didn't shout ideology or betrayal. Instead, over the course of nearly 20 years, he quietly sold America's most guarded military secrets, not out of belief, but out of greed.
I have to say that Kmart security is better than anything the Navy would have. I mean, Kmart protects their toothpaste better than the Navy protects their top secrets.
His espionage wasn't just damaging, it was catastrophic. By the time he was caught, analysts estimated that the Soviet Union had gained access to more than 1 million classified naval messages. It may have been the single biggest compromise of U.S. naval intelligence in modern history. This is the story of a man who turned a code room into a cash machine, a story of betrayal, deception, and a spy ring so reckless he even recruited his own son.
My father promised me about $5,000 a month for your basic espionage provider, which was me.
This is the true story of John Anthony Walker, the man who sold America's Navy. John Walker joined the U.S. Navy in 1955, enlisting after dropping out of high school and searching for direction. What began as a straightforward military career quickly became something else. Walker trained as a communications specialist, giving him access to highly sensitive materials, most notably crypto systems and classified naval codes. These systems were the backbone of America's communications across fleets and continents. By the late 1960s, Walker's personal life was unraveling. He was deeply in debt, his marriage was failing, and he was looking for a way out fast. That's when he made a move that would change U.S. intelligence forever. On December 1967, Walker walked into the Soviet embassy in Washington, D.C., carrying a briefcase full of stolen documents. Inside were secret Navy communications, encryption manuals, and code settings. Along with the materials, Walker left a note. He wanted to become a regular supplier in exchange for cash.
I sold secrets to a country that we were not at war with, and never have been at war with, and never will be at war with. That's all I'm saying. Don't make more of it than it is.
Over the next few months, Walker handed over a steady stream of information. He passed along key lists, cipher cards, and naval routing instructions, all of which helped the KGB decrypt real-time U.S. military traffic. The Soviets could now eavesdrop on American submarines, warships, and diplomatic cables, gaining unprecedented insight into troop movements, nuclear strategy, and global operations. And the most terrifying part? The U.S. had no idea it was happening. Using his top-secret clearance and crypto access, Walker began systematically stealing key lists, documents that held the daily codes used by the U.S. Navy to encrypt messages. These codes weren't just for routine traffic. They protected communications related to submarine movements, nuclear readiness, and global strategy. With every drop to his KGB handlers, Walker made it easier for the Soviet Union to read U.S. messages in real time. They weren't just spying on the Navy's past, they were following its present. At one point, American analysts would later conclude that Walker's betrayal allowed the Soviets to monitor nearly every naval operation the U.S. conducted in the Atlantic. The security breach was so deep, it potentially compromised the effectiveness of the U.S. nuclear deterrent during a critical phase of the Cold War. His work didn't end when he left active duty. After retiring from the Navy in 1976, John took a civilian job as a communications specialist, again with access to sensitive systems. He also kept in contact with active duty personnel and maintained a network of sources who could provide classified materials. Meanwhile, the money kept flowing. the Soviet intelligence rewarded Walker with cash payments, gold coins, and even a pension agreement. Recognizing his value as one of their most important assets in the West, it's estimated that in total he was paid over $350,000, equivalent to more than $1 million today. For Walker, espionage wasn't political, it was business. But eventually, business needed to grow, and that's when he made a decision that would make the damage even worse. He brought in his own family. By the late 1970s, John Walker's solo operation had grown into something far more dangerous, a full-blown spy ring. His first recruit was his older brother Arthur Walker, a retired Navy lieutenant commander who had taken a civilian job at a defense contractor. John convinced him to pass along internal memos, classified technical documents, and submarine designs. Arthur agreed, not out of ideology, but out of loyalty and financial desperation. Next, John targeted his own son, Michael Walker, a young sailor stationed aboard the aircraft carrier USS Nimitz. Michael had access to sensitive fleet movement data and communications logs. John instructed him on how to smuggle documents, how to copy them, and how to make drops without being noticed.
Nobody ever suspected me of stealing documents from any of the commands that I was assigned to, mostly because of the way I carried myself.
The final piece was Jerry Whitworth, a fellow Navy communications expert who had served with John years earlier. Walker convinced him to join the operation by promising large payouts and anonymity. Whitworth had access to cryptographic materials that were critical to U.S. Navy operations in the Pacific. Once he was on board, the spy ring had access to secrets from both oceans, Atlantic and Pacific. Together, this family-run espionage network provided the Soviets with an unparalleled view into U.S. naval activity. It was the kind of insight any intelligence agency could only dream of, and it lasted for nearly 2 decades. All the while, John Walker ran the operation from suburban Virginia. To outsiders, he was just a private investigator and occasional security consultant. But behind the scenes, he was coordinating drops, collecting documents, and passing coded messages to his KGB handlers. He even used dead drops in public parks and coded notes inside newspapers to move information. And for years, no one suspected a thing. But inside his own home, someone was watching and growing increasingly uneasy. Behind John Walker's calm, calculated exterior, cracks were starting to form. His marriage had collapsed years earlier, and his ex-wife, Barbara Walker, had long suspected he was hiding something. In 1984, she made a fateful decision. She contacted the FBI, telling agents she believed her ex-husband was spying for the Soviet Union and had even pulled her son into it. At first, the tip was treated cautiously, but once investigators began digging, the scope of what they uncovered shocked them. For months, the FBI launched a quiet but intensive surveillance operation. They tailed Walker, monitored his movements, and placed wiretaps. Eventually, they caught him in the act. On May 20, 1985, John Walker was arrested in rural Virginia, caught red-handed after leaving a package of classified documents at a dead drop site in a park. He had no idea the FBI had been watching the entire time. His arrest set off a chain reaction. Within days, Michael Walker, Arthur Walker, and Jerry Whitworth were all taken into custody. The spy ring that had functioned for nearly 18 years had finally been dismantled. The trials that followed the Walker spy ring arrests revealed one of the most damaging intelligence breaches in American history. In federal court, John Walker pleaded guilty to espionage in exchange for a reduced sentence for his son Michael. He cooperated with prosecutors, offering detailed accounts of what he had provided to the Soviets and how he had managed to operate undetected for so long. His confession confirmed the worst fears of U.S. intelligence officials. Over nearly 2 decades, Walker had supplied the KGB with thousands of classified documents, including daily encryption keys, submarine communication codes, and even wartime contingency plans. John Walker was sentenced to life in prison. His son Michael received a 25-year sentence, while Arthur Walker and Jerry Whitworth were also convicted and given long prison terms. None of them ever publicly expressed remorse. In the aftermath, the U.S. Navy was forced to undertake massive internal reforms. Security clearance procedures were overhauled. Cryptographic systems were redesigned. Monitoring of personnel with access to sensitive data became significantly stricter. The case of John Walker became a textbook example of how a single insider, motivated purely for greed, could cause damage on a global scale.